Yes, there he is. Feels like a pretty good one too, you know. I think bluegills, when it comes down to it, are some of the funnest fish to catch. Especially when you're in shallow water like this. See if we can get that untangled. This feels like a pretty good fish. I hope it's, yeah, it's gotta be a gill. I don't think it's a perch. You know, you get a lot of, oh yeah, look at that. There's exactly how we wanted to start our day today right there. Look at that, a perfect 9-inch bluegill to start our day. Here's the thing, man, this is one of the funnest things you can get out and do in the winter, especially at the time of the year that we're in right now. This is that January thaw. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful today. It's a little bit gray and it might feel a little bit gloomy, but let me tell you something, the weather's perfect. I mean, when it comes down to it, these fish, they should bite all day long, and fish like that right here, they're feeding heavily. When they feel this change, when all of a sudden it warms up, I mean, we're talking mid-30s today. I don't even got to be in the house. We're in the house just to be in the house, but the reality of it is just beautiful. And fish like this, they feel it and they start feeding heavy. We'll keep that one. We're going to get a bunch of these today. That right there. It's a great start to a fishing trip. There's another one down there right now. It just goes to show you that when these fish come in, they'll just be in packs, and you gotta hustle a little bit. You know, as much as I'd love to take my time in getting back down there, you gotta move pretty quick, because when these fish come in, they're moving together. Boy, he's just right on it. Look at that. He's just hanging on the tip. Man. Sometimes with bluegills, the best thing you can do is just hit the brakes, because realistically, sometimes you can overjig them. Oh yeah, look at that one. That's a giant. That's a great fish right there. And when I say a giant, I mean, I'm talking a big fish for pressured water. You know, we're fishing an area today where there's a lot of people fishing. This is a pretty popular lake. I'm not too far out of the Twin Cities, and this lake right here, it sees a lot of people fishing it throughout the year. And fish like that one right there, you know what? He's had to avoid a lot of lines to get as big as he is. You know, one of the things I want to talk about today too is what happens when you get this January thaw that we've got right now, because this January thaw happens almost every single year. And the number one thing that happens is all of a sudden all the snow melts off the ice and all the snow starts melting off the shorelines. Well, then all of a sudden there's this influx of new water into the system that comes in underneath the ice. Most of the time, that's actually happening around the shorelines, because we're not to that point where we have honeycombed ice yet. We're at that point where the water that's going to come in sneaks in along the shorelines, and it clears everything up because it's clean water. It's the cleanest water that's come into the system since it iced up. And the other thing is, now that the system has finally been able to kind of settle down after that initial ice up, you bring in that clean, clear water, and all of a sudden the water gets super clear. But here's the other thing that happens. It sucks fish back up into bays, because all of a sudden that's where that influx of the new water is, and it'll pull minnows up there, it'll pull the bluegills up there, it'll pull crappies up there, it'll pull walleyes, pike, whatever it may be, because they feel that influx of new water. It's almost just like in the spring, but it's just a premature move, because see, these fish, they've been sitting out here in a little bit deeper water, but now they feel that urge. They come in, they might not be here for long. It's going to depend on when it gets cold again, how much more snow we get to cover everything up. But that clean, clear water coming in here just drives a whole change in the system. So that's one of the first things I do when I'm looking for panfish in the winter when we get this thaw, is I work my way up into these bays, because those fish that were sitting right on those edges, maybe out in that deeper stuff, get sucked right up in here. And I mean, the way they're coming in here today, I mean, you can tell there's a bunch of them up here. Now, I'm not going to tell you there's a ton of them, but there's enough of them to sit and work out a pretty good limit of fish most of the time. Let's see if we can find another one of them. That's a good fish right there. There we go. Look at that, right in the tip. Look at that. Got him. These fish, one of the things that'll happen in a spot like what we're in here is they'll get a little finicky, and here's why they'll do that to you. All of a sudden, oh, he's stuck on the ice. Come on, there we go. Look at that. Just gave him a little bit of slack and got away with it. Didn't lose him. Another great dinner gill. But one of the things we'll do is really, really slow down, and you'll have to, and here's why you will. This water, with the new water that came into the system, it's cleared up. And now as soon as it clears up, the bite changes. There's no two ways around it. These fish are going to get far more finicky. When the water's dirty, you can get away with a lot more. In fact, you can catch fish on a lot more aggressive presentations, but when the water gets really clean, and I mean, I can look down this hole today and I can nearly see the bottom, and I'm sitting in 13, 14 feet of water here. When I drop that jig down, I can almost see it all the way to the bottom. But one of the things I do when you get into this situation is now's the time to switch to that tiniest little jig, one single wax worm. You know, get really subtle and barely move it, because they're looking for the most natural presentation they can find. And now it's different. Before, when we were trying to bring them in, when the water was a little bit dirtier before this thaw, when I was trying to bring them in, I'd work a little more aggressive and I'm getting them to react. Now they're feeding more on sight because they can see so well. We're at that point in the winter where a bunch of things have happened. One, the water's settled out. Two, we've had that thaw, so the snow's gone on the ice, so there's more light down there. And three, you've got that new influx of water that's cleaned it all up, so it can make a big difference. So that's why I'm fishing with just a tiny little Lindy tungsten toad. Just something really small, something I can put down there, just hang horizontally and just rock it around a little bit, and that'll make all the difference right there. If I were going with a spoon or something far more aggressive today, I would really struggle, because they just don't need to be fooled like that. I don't need to try to bring them in with noise and vibration. They can see, they're moving around eating, and what I got to do is just put the right thing in front of them so that when they do come through, they see it and grab it. There he is, got him. Boy, that guy, he just come in, look. Boy, this one feels like a real good one too. Yep, another good one, look at that. Another perfect fish for the pail. Man, I'll tell you, this is some of the funnest fishing you can get out and do. And what's really cool about this is a lot of times gets overlooked, and let me explain to you why. I mean, we got some people around us. Some people have started to figure this out, and you know, that doesn't take long. But one of the things that happens is so many guys have vacated these early ice areas, and that's what we're in right now. I mean, this is what I consider to be an early ice area. There was weeds in here that grew earlier this year. There's still some weeds, you know, I mean, even when I drilled the hole, there was a couple little green weeds popped up. I mean, there's still some stuff floating around in here, so it's still got what it takes to hold fish. But the big thing was when that water started rolling in, it kept them here, because a lot of guys had already moved out because the fish had started moving out. So as soon as all those guys got out there deeper, now all of a sudden when all this happened and you get that January thaw and those fish come running back in here, you can get a little bit of time on your own. Like I say, the word's getting out about this bite now, but the realistic side of it is if you can be one of the first ones out in this January thaw type situation, you find a location like this, these back bays, anywhere where, yeah, especially I'll tell you one that's really great is when you have hills around it. And this area has some hills off to this side of this bay, and it just pours that clean water in, and it can make such a huge difference. I mean, it can just make a bite just flip on like a light switch. Bouncing that rod tip on. See if it'll come up a little bit. Ooh, there he grabbed it. He's got it. Right when I stopped it there. Got him. Look at that. That feels like another dandy too. Man, it's funny how that'll work. You think you're doing everything right. You jig. Oh yeah, look at this one. Wow, look at that fish right there. That is just a great fish right there. Let me show you something. There's something really cool about this fish that he brought up with him. When I talk about those weeds that are down there, look at that. I had just put that jig just down into those weeds. And when he grabbed it, look at that. It's not much, just a little bit, but look at the size of that gill. What a great fish to wrap the day up with. I'll tell you, this is one of those situations that as far as I'm concerned, it's just one of the funnest situations you can be in, is midwinter when these fish start acting a little bit like it's spring, when they start feeling that water influx coming in and they start moving in back into the bays. Now these fish, when it gets cold, they're probably going to bail one more time. I mean, it's only January. They may not stay here, but here's what is going to happen. They are going to be back here again when the snow melts off. You know, we're bound to get some more snow, but when it melts off again in that March time frame, you're going to get another crack at this. But don't overlook that chance you got in January, because if you get out and get on this one, man, I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun. You can pile up a bunch of gills like that one. I think I'm gonna let that guy go. We've got a good pail, and that's a really nice fish right there.